big screen. We'll also pay tribute to movie greats of the past and look to the stars of tomorrow. So join me, Tom Brooke, and the rest of the Talking Movies team on BBC World News.
This is BBC World News. I'm Yalda Hakim. The headlines. The United Nations General Assembly is to vote on a special resolution about the conflict in Ukraine. The results will show Kyiv which nations are backing its struggle against Russia and which nations are supporting Moscow. A final day of campaigning is taking place ahead of Nigeria's most tightly contested presidential election for nearly 25 years. 3 contenders have a chance of victory. The current president isn't taking part. He's reached his 2-term limit. The UN's Middle East envoy has arrived in the Gaza Strip in an attempt to calm tensions. It comes after Israel carried out airstrikes in the Gaza Strip after rockets were fired from the Palestinian-controlled territory. And political leaders have condemned the shooting of an off-duty policeman in Northern Ireland. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell is in a critical but stable condition.
Now on BBC World News, the latest business news from across the globe. World Business Report.
Put your money where your mouth is. The US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen calls for more international financial help for Ukraine.
I've been following her press conference, and despite the urgency of the situation in Ukraine, Janet Yellen's message on the global economy was more upbeat.
Also ahead, England's new football regulator announces rules to block any lucrative breakaway league. Hello to you, welcome along. This is World Business Report. I'm Ben Thompson, and we're going to begin with those strong words from Janet Yellen, who has called for more urgent financial assistance for Ukraine. The US Treasury Secretary said her country was ready to provide an additional $10 billion in economic assistance, but said that others had to step up too. While speaking in India today, she warned that economic aid was already proving to be crucial for the war-torn country.
And our economic assistance is making Ukraine's resistance possible by supporting the home front, funding critical public services, and helping keep the government running.
So that is Janet Yellen there speaking in India. Let's speak to our North America business correspondent, Michelle Fleury. Michelle, you were watching what she had to say, and perhaps no surprise, Ukraine needs money. It is now marking that 1-year anniversary since Russia's invasion. But she was quite critical that others just weren't stepping up.
Look, I mean, she's trying to keep the focus on making sure that more aid flows to Ukraine to help in the fight against Russia. The US obviously has given a lot. We're talking tens of billions of dollars to try and support the country. It's urging now the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, to move quicker to get aid to the country. And again, looking at some of its other countries across the spectrum to try and lend their support. Interestingly, there was also a warning to China saying that there would be repercussions if it aided Russia in evading sanctions. At the same time, there was another message to China, though, that was more conciliatory, saying that economic talks between the 2 economic superpowers could resume at some point in the future.
Yeah, and Michelle, I mean, what expectation is there that countries will step up and heed that warning from Janet Yellen to provide that financial help?
Well, I think, you know, G20 forums, right, which bring together the leaders of countries from around the world, emerging countries, but also economic sort of powerhouses. It's an opportunity for them to kind of shine the spotlight on this issue and make sure that, if you like, domestic politics don't mean that people's kind of support for Ukraine wavers. And I think that's what Janet Yellen is trying to do there, to make sure as we've seen Biden do just this week, that the international community continues to support the country. At the same time, she also had a better message on the global economy, saying it was faring better than previously thought. That's something that people can take away as one piece of good news here.
Yeah, absolutely. We need those right now, don't we? Michelle, lovely to see you. Thanks so much. Michelle Fleury there live in New York. And we're going to stay with Ukraine because the war there, of course, has forced more than 8 million Ukrainians to flee to other European countries. But the big question is how they may begin to build a new life far from home. Well, many of the refugees are women, and in Denmark, local business groups that have been backed by Google have now launched a programme to train female entrepreneurs. In Copenhagen, Adrian Murray has been speaking to some of those taking part.
Miroslava Droniuk left Ukraine with her young daughter shortly after the invasion began.
I'm sure for most of the people who left, it was one of the hardest period of their life.
At first she was offered cleaning and factory work, but now she's got a job in marketing and is running the business she co-founded in Ukraine, selling silk beauty products.
We had this campaign in Ukraine that if you have some kind of the business, you need to make it run again because we need to have some economy.
Her business partner Nadia is in Lviv in western Ukraine. She comes from Mariupol, which was devastated earlier in the war.
In the first month of war, of course, we were kind of frozen because you don't know how bad things will get. You don't even know whether your business, the baby that you've been working on will survive.
Miroslava was among 60 Ukrainian women who took part in an entrepreneurship program over 6 weeks last year. She's since decided to take their business to new markets beyond Ukraine. Soon the scheme will be rolled out to more than 1,000 Ukrainian refugees, and it's also launched in Sweden.
We go from every step, from your idea to make a business plan, to test business plan, to register company, to open bank account.
Since Russia's invasion a year ago, around 30,000 displaced Ukrainians have come to Denmark. The vast majority are women, and many had children. Special work permits were granted, and among those over 16, 60% now have jobs. At this Dragon's Den-style pitching session, would-be entrepreneurs are hoping to win investment.
They all have a mindset that they want to create that value while they're here, but they also want to make sure they build competencies that they eventually can use when they come back to Ukraine and help rebuild Ukraine.
Every letter has...
Olga Gorok has designed an app helping kids learn and exercise, and says the situation in Ukraine made her even more determined to succeed.
After all that war things and that stressed month, I was just, okay, I don't want to waste my time with something that not my soul.
While Denmark has welcomed Ukrainians, its tough policies towards other refugees have been criticised. Organisers here hope the business training will be adopted more widely.
When we surveyed the first group, almost 30% of them started hiring people. We see more than 50% that have, increased their revenues. In general, the thinking about refugees as being an asset and not a liability for our societies. And I think that is a very important lesson for most of the world.
No one knows how long this war will go on, but the Ukrainian women here are making efforts to carve out their own future. Adrian Murray, BBC News, Copenhagen.
Now, it might be known as the beautiful game, but things got a little ugly 2 years ago when Europe's top football clubs tried to start a European Super League. Well, today, England's new football independent regulator, which is government-backed, confirmed it will also block any future attempts to create a lucrative breakaway league. There'll also be rules on more scrutiny as well on any future takeovers of clubs, including a more stringent owners and directors test. Well, let's speak to Jenny Mitten, who is the women's sport lead at M&C Saatchi Sport and Entertainment. Jenny, thanks for being with us. Let's talk first of all about those rules on ownership. Lots of scrutiny of who is owning these top flight clubs. What do these rules tell us and how will they be policed?
I think that's the interesting point. We haven't seen the detail around these new rules yet. So we've talked about enhanced regulation. We know the tests in place aren't working. We saw that with what happened with Bury. And the fans have come out and spoken really firmly with the Tracy Crouch review. This isn't acceptable. So we know these are going to be harsh. They're going to be very regulated. But we haven't actually seen the detail yet. And I think that's what will be interesting. I think it was very telling, the Premier League response, that there's some nervousness maybe about what they will look like.
Yeah, and clearly we have to remember whenever we talk about sport like this, that it's big business. It's sport, but it is business, and there's a lot of money at stake, and therefore there's a lot of pressure to get it right. And I wonder whether any of these rules start changing the fundamentals of how these things are funded. Lots of money, lots of ownership, lots of prestige, but at the end of the day, it's about profit.
It's true, there's huge amounts of money, but look, I think we have to remember the foundation of the game is fans. And this is where this review and this is where these regulations have come into place. In terms of one of the biggest revenue streams into football, which is sponsors, I think they'll actually welcome this move. I think for big brands, you want security, you want safety, you want to ensure that your investments, especially during a cost of living crisis, are smart and wise. So having these regulations in place, they know they can invest and they won't get reputational damage. They won't be criticised by their customers. So it'll be quite interesting to see how they do react. Will it actually bring more sponsors to the game?
And really briefly for us, Jenny, a pay rise for Arsenal women's footballers.
Fantastic news. And this is a direct correlation to the fact that the women are bringing more revenue to the club. We saw season ticket go up. We saw, we've seen the recent audiences in the men's game, and it's great to see the club reflecting that in the rise. The women don't come out and say we want equal money. They just want equal opportunities. So if they're bringing more fans to the game, they should be paid for it.
Jenny, really good to talk to you. Sorry to keep it brief. Jenny Mitten there at M&C Saatchi. You're up to date. We'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.